Welcome to Legends to Leaders. Today, we're thrilled to introduce a perioperative and nursing executive who has spent nearly 3 decades walking into the operating rooms of some of the country's largest healthcare systems like Cleveland Clinic, Brown University, and making them run better than how she found them. Today, our topic is block time politics. Who gets it, who loses it, and how to make these decisions without making enemies. Welcome, Barbara.
Oh, thank you so very much for having me today.
Barbara, why don't we start here? Tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, and your pathway into perioperative leadership.
Great, happy to. So in all actuality, I have been in perioperative leadership for close to, at least perioperative services for a little over 4 decades.
Wow.
Yeah, long time. And it's been a very rewarding career. I have my Master's of Science in Nursing Leadership. I have my MBA. I have my NEABC, which is your Nurse Executive Advanced Board Certified certification, as well as my CNOR, and I've had both of those for over 30 years. I started my career at Albany Medical Center in upstate New York at Albany, New York. Albany Med was an academic science center, a level one trauma. There, I learned how to scrub and circulate. And through my time there, I was over the neurosurgery service line. And I was promoted at one point to become the nurse manager over the 26 ORs at that point in time.
Okay.
From there, I was recruited, and every job that I've had was due to a recruiter, except for my last one. So from there, I was recruited to a large community hospital in University of Pittsburgh, UPMC, and then I was recruited to the Cleveland Clinic, which was a phenomenal experience, a huge responsibility. When I got there, they had 60 ORs in one spot, and I ended with 76.
Wow.
Both for UPMC and the Cleveland Clinic, those were director roles. So from 2009 until now, I have had either a VP position, a VP ACNO, or ACNO position. Uh, then I was recruited to UMass Memorial, Leahy, and the last place that I worked permanently in a permanent position was Brown Health in Rhode Island Hospital. So my career, it's been so very, very rewarding. It was more personal growth. At each hospital, I learned more and more. And at one point in time, I said, you know what, I can give back and I think I can do better than what I'm currently doing now if I have a role where I have a voice. And so that's why it propelled me to become a vice president and an ACNO, is that to help influence those individuals that are not familiar with the operating room. And quite truthfully, if you haven't worked in an operating room, you don't know how it works.
Well, so we're talking about block time scheduling here.
Mhm.
Um, is the block time, is it the role of the director of surgical services? Is it the role of the nurse manager? Is it the role of the vice president? Kind of talk to me a little bit about how you've been in all three of those roles. Where does block time become sort of your charge?
Well, block time is so very, very important because it's the structure for how you run that operating room. And being that the operating room is the most expensive real estate within a hospital, followed closely by radiology, you need to maximize that revenue for strategic planning and goals and stuff like that. Um, Being the manager, yes, you know the nuances of that operating room. You know how it's run. You know your conflicts. You know what you're up against every day. And you know how to interface and react and work with your surgeons. The director should be overseeing that. Uh, and then the VP of perioperative services certainly does get involved. But this role is not just for the director. It is not a standalone, and it never should be. You should not take this on by yourself. You need to have a co-facilitator, and that should be your medical director for the OR or for perioperative services. It is not a standalone. You know as well as I do that, it's the RN slash verse MDDO, and it can get very, very dicey because it's very, very important to surgeons that they have that time to operate and get their RBUs, which is related to their compensation. So for a block committee, what I have experienced and really does work is that you have, as the director, you have your wingman, who's going to be your medical director, and then you have a very small committee, a block committee, which consists of no more than 5 people. You should have representation from anesthesia, and depending on the size of your organization, it might even be as high as the vice chair of anesthesia. You need to have your business partner, your business manager, if you should have one. And you should have your nurse manager because, again, that nurse manager is going to know all those barriers and obstacles far better than anybody else.
So you mentioned the co-facilitator,
Mm-hmm.
co. That sounds
Go.
like equal, right?
Yep.
Medical director. So that makes me think that um, there might be some duties or might be some rules of thumb that this is for the director of surgical services to do, and maybe that's talk to the OR nurses, or this is something that the medical director could do. Are there certain things that you think about, like when the big complicated like morass or checklist of things that you're trying to do to improve block scheduling, that there are certain things that the medical director does and certain things that the director of surgical services does?
Not really. So again, it's you're not, this committee is the ones that have the accountability and the authority to allocate time. So the first thing with block committee is that you need to have a policy that is so well written and so comprehensive that it deals with who the membership is, what the purpose is, the level of authority that you have. It's not OR executive committee. It's the block committee that is going to make these decisions as an aggregate, not a standalone. And from there, you have your committee that will make the decisions and how you communicate those changes, whether you are giving more block or taking more block, which again can be very dicey to some individuals because not everybody's going to be happy. Um, so it again, it's just that unified, having that great policy that everyone should be familiar with and work from.
So if I don't have that policy and I am the new director of surgical services, where do I go to get one? Is it available on AORN website? Are you using AI to draft something like that right now? How would you give guidance to someone that was starting from scratch?
I think since AI is now, on the horizon and everybody's is using it, so you could probably try there. But I highly doubt that an organization does not have a policy that speaks to block.
Okay.
It is that important. Now, to speak about what the responsibilities are for the director, they need to ensure that when they sit with the block committee, that one, if there are any kind of staffing problems, because you can't start allocating block when you don't have enough staff or enough competent staff to add a different service. So it's staffing, it's equipment such as microscopes, OR tables. It might even behoove you to bring your capital request list for that fiscal year so that the members are aware of some of the obstacles and can actually lever some influence with those individuals that are controlling the capital, and that's a whole different ballgame. And then the instrumentation, the director and the nurse manager need to have an extremely close relationship with the manager and director of SPD to ensure that you have enough instrumentation. And if you're adding more block, you got to make sure that all these bases are, this is what you're, as the director, this is what you are responsible for. As the VP, if we have allocated time and all of a sudden we can find out that one day you have 5 rooms of neurosurgery going and you only have 3 Pantero microscopes, that's a big problem.
So have you ever been in a organization in which SPD had a seat on the block committee?
No, no,
That's not probably
no.
appropriate.
No, no, because they're just going to do what the OR is demanding of them on any given day and stuff like that. I will say that it's imperative that whomever is over OR scheduling, that group, that cohort of individuals that are actually creating that schedule from the offices when they're booking the cases, they need the director or the nurse manager, more so probably the director, needs to ensure that they understand all the changes that have been made and where they're going to go from there. They're connected at the hip. So, and there's one other thing when we start talking about allocation of block time. You need to be, and this is the Achilles heel of every operating room, is case length accuracy. That again is maybe for another discussion, but just to be aware of when you're allocating block, new block, just be aware of those surgeons that manipulate their time, and there are those that do it, to extend their day and that will wreak havoc on the block.
they'll actually be complicit, or will they have just sort of fallen, not asleep at the wheel, but like talk to me a little bit about that specific nuance. That sounds very interesting.
The case length accuracy. So
Yes.
it's this goes hand in hand with scheduling. So when they book, whether it be in Cerner or Epic, the length of their case that they're going to need. If they want to try and get another case on during their block, they'll shorten it. And 9 times out of 10, that's a bad move, because you're going to find out at the change of shift that you don't have the evening staff to cover the length of the case because it's running over. And then on the flip side too, when surgeons say it's not going to take me 4 hours, it's only going to take me 2.5, and this is why a nurse manager needs to be part of the conversation in the block committee, because they'll be able to tell you, because they've been burned, what surgeons they can say, no, this guy, I believe him. And I'm not trying to pass judgment or anything,
Right.
but it's very, very hard to run the board every day in an operating room and find that at 5 o'clock, you should have maybe 9 rooms going and you've got 16 and you don't have enough staff. And that gets really old by Wednesday afternoon.
So nurse manager is in the block committee.
Oh, yes, very much so. So it's your director, it's your co-facilitator, which is your medical director,
Right?
your anesthesia provider, who, depending on the size of the institution, it could be a vice chairman, your
Right.
business partner, and your nurse manager, because they know the ins and outs and the whole culture and the vibe of their operating room.
So when you say business manager, business representative, is that a business director of surgical services? Certainly in large hospitals, large systems,
Yes.
they will have that role. What about for smaller organizations that don't have a business director of surgical services? Who fills in that capacity?
Well, hopefully the director has the ability through their masters. You wouldn't be someone in this with just a baccalaureate, but that's one of the ones. When I was at Cleveland Clinic, I went and I said to myself, I'm going to need to get an MBA, because I need to speak the talk, understand it, the ratios, the contribution margins, everything that the business model has. So that would be wonderful. You're going to see a lot of people in a VP position for perioperative services have their MBA.
Who sets the agenda for the block committee meeting?
Oh, so it starts with the director, because the medical director is probably operating and having clinic and doing all of that. So it does originate with the director, but before you have the block committee, you just quickly review it with that medical director. And that is a very, very close, meaningful relationship, because it's not just for block, but it's for everything that relates to that operating room. So again, I say it's your wingman. You watch him or her and they watch you. It's a very, very close and meaningful relationship.
Go another round on that. Tell me a little bit more about proper relationship between the medical director, your co-facilitator, and the
Mhm.
director of surgical services. It sounds like this is a touch point by which relationships are built and trust needs to be high and trust needs to be established. Can you talk to me a little bit about how to optimize for the relationship with your medical director?
Sure. I must say I've been very, very fortunate that all my medical directors I have worked very nicely with. It's going in and working with them. I understand their years of dedication, what they went through for their residency, their fellowships. I understand their workload. I'm not coming in, all, ready for bear, if you will. And it's just I want to help them. They want to help me. And the goal is to maximize that real estate in that operating room, because that OR is the most expensive real estate in the hospital, and that revenue that it generates keeps that place solvent. So, we both have that goal. We want the CFO, the CEO, and anyone else that's going to be looking at our metrics to say, that is a great running operating room. So, you don't want to go and you don't ever want to be argumentative, but you should have the relationship that you feel comfortable to challenge each other. And that's where that professionalism comes in with the growth that you've had over the course of the years.
Tell me another acronym I heard. I think I know the definition. Could you give me a couple of beats on the RVU?
Sure. So the RVUs is the relative value unit. And so surgeons, when they go in there, and this is the block, they have their assigned time that they can count on. They generate their RVUs, which is related to their compensation. So this is their livelihood.
Right.
That's why it's so important for them to have the time that they have.
So it sounds like that is a important piece of data for the director of surgical services to understand and to how to communicate that.
Well, you don't want to get into the compensation piece with the surgeon, but you have to understand that this is their livelihood.
Right.
So you do want to restrict it. And and if you restricted them to have OR time, it's gonna and not only for that surgeon, but for that department. So let's just say all of a sudden you're becoming really too restrictive of orthopedics. Well, that chairman's gonna want to know what's going on and stuff. And the chairman should be aware of this is so OR committee should be reporting to OR executive committee, not in we need your permission, but this is what we've done, this is our metrics, stuff like that. And the chairman who sits on our executive committee needs to be abreast and updated as well. So, it's very, very important, the RVUs.
Okay. And so now imagine we have a provider who needs to be spoken to about something that needs improvement. Can you talk to me a little bit about how you might communicate that in a way that's fair and transparent and doesn't come across as personal?
Do you want it just for block or do you want it for just no, because there's a different approach for different problems.
Okay.
For block, if because this is what we're talking about for block, not everyone's going to be happy. So let's just say someone wants more time, and you can't give it to them, or you're taking time away. And they see you in the hallway and they want to have a conversation. Don't be argumentative. And I'm not a fan of hallway conversations,
Okay.
but you just, nope, this is way too important. And you might say something thinking that it's the right thing to say and it isn't. So just hear them out and then just offer up some time. Hey, I'll come to your office. Let's set some time apart so that we can meet and we can go over the metrics so that you understand where we're coming from. Again, the director is not the one that made the decision. It was the committee that made the decision. So the authority, it's coming from the committee. So they shouldn't feel like it's directed solely at them. And then, that person will go and do their thing. And then the director is going to go find their wingman, their medical director, and say, hey, Dr. Smith just caught me in the hallway and is really upset, blah, blah, blah. Let's talk with them. And so you probably the two of you, the director of the OR or periop and the medical director should meet with this individual.
That is interesting. That's great. Gold. That hallway conversations, that's um is a moment in time that could be fraught with peril.
Oh,
And
yeah.
to say this is very important. So
Mm-hmm.
I've heard you, and I'd like to now schedule some time that I can address these comments. It's a way that you could maybe elevate that person and hear that, make them feel heard and important, and at the same time not get caught off guard in something that
Correct.
you say that you wish that you hadn't.
Exactly, exactly. And it deserves the time to be alone in a quiet environment to actually look at the data and the metrics. Why we took time away from you because you're not meeting the metrics, which is clearly stated here in the policy. And this is what we're going to do when you don't meet your metric over the course of a period of time. Even after we've given you a warning shot where you're not meeting the metric, we'll give you 3 months to try and correct your volume and your block utilization. But if that doesn't happen, I got people that are really productive and they want this time. So yeah, it deserves that dedicated time on a professional, not controversial or I'm out to get him or anything like that. Very, very professional. I think the surgeon will appreciate that approach.
Well, that's terrific. Barbara, thank you so much. So here, as we've explored block time politics, how to make those decisions without making enemies, we've heard that starting with the OR, most expensive real estate in the
Mm-hmm.
hospital, the criticality of having a co-facilitator, your
Mm-hmm.
medical director, and the word co, I think, was doing a lot of work in that conversation, in that sentence.
Yes.
Who the block committee is. It's
Mm-hmm.
involved in anesthesia. It's the nurse manager. It's the director. It's the medical director. And then, of course, the soundbite about hallway conversations. and how that's maybe a no-go zone. You can hear it, you can hear that person, you can give them an audience, but then transition the conversation to your office.
Correct. Nice summary.
That is great. Thank you very much, Barbara. I appreciate everything that you have done to help our audience with specifically block time politics, but frankly, for your leadership in the industry, and wonderful job today. Thank you very much, and keep up the great work.
Thank you so very much. Take care.